everyone who's at Everywhere Book Fest. This panel is about tropes in YA fantasy, and we're so excited to talk about our favorite tropes and battle each other about which one is the ultimate winner. I'm Kat Cho. I'm the author of Wicked Fox, which is a YA contemporary fantasy based on the Korean myth of the Kumiho, which is a nine-tailed fox. And it's a girl who has to devour the energy of men in order to live an immortal life. But when my main character, Myung, saves the life of a human boy named Jihoon, he finds out her secret. And of course, they fall in love. But bad things lurk in the background.
I'm Swati Teerdhala. I'm the author of The Tiger at Midnight. There you go. It is the first in a YA fantasy trilogy about a cat. It starts out being about a cat and mouse game between a soldier and a rebel who are on opposite sides of a conflict. And sure enough, neither one of them is totally right in what they were thinking, and they're able to kind of teach each other and grow, and things happen from there. And then lots of intrigue, action, and a hint of romance.
Hi, everyone. My name is Roseanne A. Brown, and I am the author of A Song of Wraiths and Ruin, which is the first in a YA epic fantasy duology that'll be out June 2nd. And it takes place in a world inspired by West African folklore, and it follows two protagonists. One of them is a refugee, one of them is a princess. And the refugee, he's told that his sister is kidnapped, and he's told if he wants his sister back, he needs to kill the princess. Meanwhile, the princess, her mother dies. And the princess finds out that she can resurrect her mother using a forbidden spell, but to do so, she'll have to sacrifice the heart of a king. So she stages a competition to get herself a new husband. And of course, when the refugee enters that competition, and then just everything goes bananas bonkers. And there's lots of magic, evil spirits, and lots of romance too.
Yeah. And my name is Janella Angeles. I am the author of Where Dreams Descend, which is the first in a YA fantasy duology where Phantom of the Opera meets Moulin Rouge, has magic and circuses, magicians, and ambitious showgirl who will do whatever it takes to prove she's the best. And it comes out from Wednesday Books on August 25th.
For everyone watching, the way we're going to do this is we're going to split up into teams of two, and we're each going to take a trope, and we're going to battle the other person's trope out. No holds barred, debate styles. So for the first one, it is, let me get my list. Enemies to lovers versus friends to lovers. So on the count of three, everyone hold up. Oh.
So
Spoiler alert. On the count of three, everyone hold
ready
up.
to throw down.
Yeah, which one you are. 1, 2, 3. Oh. Okay. So why don't we do enemies to lovers first?
Okay.
Go.
We can start.
Okay, well, I think enemies to lovers is the classic romance trope, because what do you need in a romance more than anything else? Conflict and tension. And what else gives you conflict and tension but enemies? Like, you're on the opposite sides of something, or you hate each other, or it's a combination. So of course that romance is like, it's never going to happen. So that's the intrigue, and that's the interesting part of it, because how is that going to happen? How are they going to come together? Like, what fun things, or like really soft, gooey things are they going to find out about each other? How's it going to happen? Like, I need to know.
Yes, and to piggyback off that, I think another element that's just so great about enemies to lovers is like part of a good romance is both the characters kind of discovering their truest self when they're with each other, right? And so enemies to lovers, your characters are already starting out seeing the worst the other one has to offer. They're seeing like the depths of how like cruel they can be, how evil, like the absolute worst. And it can only get better. Like, okay, sometimes it does get worse, but then eventually it always gets better. And I just love the idea of like with enemies to lovers, these characters, like for them to truly get past their prejudices, their anger, their hatred of each other, to truly get to the other side of that and to truly value the other person as a person. Like, it takes such a complex journey that it brings the characters to. And then just also like the person where they're attracted to each other, but they won't admit it. It's just beautiful.
Yes. I'm going to add an example that I think is classic enemies to lovers, and Rosie, please add more, or add on to this. But I think if you guys are fans of Avatar: The Last Airbender, yes,
No.
Does that actually happen? That doesn't happen.
No,
though.
it doesn't happen. But okay, so this is not like an actual thing that happens. However, the idea of this is the core, the essence of enemies to lovers, which is Zuko and Katara.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
I would also say the kind of classic one is Batman and Catwoman, right? Like,
Yeah.
come on, like that's great.
That's a good one. I mean, a really good one is Tiger at Midnight. Wait, I'm not on your team. Wait, I shouldn't help.
And then a traditional trope that falls under enemies to lovers is also the Beauty and the Beast trope. Though of course there's a lot of fair criticism about like Beauty and the Beast and like playing like Stockholm Syndrome and all that, which is all very valid. But just kind of like the core myth that we see repeat through lots of different cultures, where like two people are brought together who you would never see as lovers, and then they start to see more in each other than they see anywhere else. I think that's just kind of a sign that enemies to lovers is found very appealing across lots and lots of different storytelling styles and genres.
I really love the friends to lovers tropes, but the friends to lovers trope, which is like a sub trope underneath it that I love the most, is like a friend that you loved when you were younger, and then they leave, and then they come back, and you're like, ooh, they're hot now. So I really like that. I feel like, okay, maybe some people watching won't agree with this, but I was always Team Mal in the Grisha trilogy. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was.
Okay.
You know what though? It's because I was an adult when I first started reading it. I didn't read it when it first came out. I was like a full adult, and I was like, the dark flame is kind of toxic as a love interest. Like as a love interest, he's toxic. So I just like.
But okay, there were other options other than the dark thing, though.
Oh, like
Nikolai.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
King of Stars.
That could have never worked out, you guys.
No, 100%.
That could have never worked out.
Never say never.
Well, what do you think, Janella?
I mean, I love all like romance tropes, but I think that friends to lovers is one of my like. I love it when it's the last stage, because it's like you can go from enemies to friends to lovers, or rivals to friends to lovers, or annoyances to friends to lovers. Like that friendship stage for like a lasting romance, I feel is really necessary, because it builds the foundation. And I feel like there's also that opportunity for slow burn and tension in a lot of ways that people don't expect, because when you make that leap from friends to lovers, like you can't go back. It's really a will they, won't they kind of situation. And the stakes are really high for the characters, because like you're either going to like give up a friendship and progress on to something else, or it doesn't work out, but you're going to try anyway. So it's a lot of internal conflict from moving to friends to lovers. And I also just love that it's super, super soft. Like, I love the soft moments. I love the getting to understand and establish like some respect between like two of the love interests. It just, I feel like everything boils down to friends to lovers in any romance, in my opinion.
That's a really good point.
I'll also argue that like, I think that friends to lovers kind of allows us to see like that they've established like an emotional connection that's like really deep and meaningful, and they can already be each other's person. Going back to Mal and Alina, they're already each other's person before Mal realizes that he loves her. But so I really like that.
What's more deep and meaningful than hatred, though? Hatred
Yes. Okay, well, why don't you guys rebut? Now is time for rebuttals, but we only get like 30 seconds for rebuttals.
Okay, Rosie, do you want to go first?
Well, first, I just want to say like that's such a good point, and like I love soft, love it. But in the defense of enemies to lovers, I feel like there's just something so intense about that passion, and like even someone hating something, like for me, the opposite of love isn't so much hate as much as indifference. Because like if you don't care, there's just like nothing to work with. But like the amount of energy it takes to like hate someone, not just like, oh, I don't like them, I hate them. Like that takes such an intense level of energy that like anyone who cares that much, there was just such a well of passion and like intensity there that when they do make that jump to that lover stage, there's just so much to work with. Swati, go.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I will also say that I think friends to lovers made a great point too. That yearning at that, like the end of the friend to lover stage, is so key. But you get that yearning for all of enemies to lovers because if it's not the hate to love subtrope, and if I wouldn't kind of a subtrope, kind of not. If you don't have the hate, you still have the conflict, and you can have like yearning and forbidden glances, and there's just so much tension and intensity. I think intensity is like a great word that Rosie said. So I'm going to leave it with that.
Okay,
Intensity.
I'm going to rebut that and say intensity can exist in friends to lovers too, because it's more of a repression, because you're so scared of losing what you already have. Like the friendship is so important to you that it's not, the intensity doesn't come from something so combative. It comes from such an internal place, and sometimes, and you can be your own worst enemy. Like being your own worst enemy can be way more stressful, I think.
I will say one more word, and that's catharsis. You get catharsis with enemies to lovers, right? Like you have that moment where you learn something about yourself. I think this is kind of piggybacking off of Rosie's earlier point, which is you have to get to a point where like you really understand something about them or about yourself to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to change my entire opinion about something.
I mean, I'm not actually anti enemies to lovers. I'm
not anti friends to lovers either. Yeah.
I know, we all love all of this. This is all just like we love everything.
We love love.
We love love. Yeah.
All right, next round, but we have two new panelists. We're doing a rotating panel here because there are just like way too many feelings and emotions caught up in all these tropes for us to just only have 4 people.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katy Rose Pool. I am the author of There Will Come a Darkness, the first in a YA fantasy trilogy, with the second one coming out this September. And this book basically follows 5 characters, you can see them up here, who are all involved in a prophecy that predicts an age of darkness. And so these 5 characters, who all come from very different walks of life, have to figure out whether they're going to be the ones to stop the age of darkness or whether they're going to be the ones to start it.
All right. And I am Christine Lynn Herman, and I wrote The Devouring Grey, which is the first book in a duology, and the second one, The Deck of Omens, will have just come out when you're watching this. And they're both books about 5 teenagers in a contemporary upstate New York town that has a lot of supernatural problems that their families may or may not have kind of thrust them into. So they have to handle the responsibility of it. And also they're like really complicated romantic and friendshipy feelings for each other.
Yay. Okay, Katy, what's the tropes we're arguing?
So the tropes that we are going to battle it out right now are the chosen one trope and the unchosen one trope, which, just to do a little blanket explanation, is basically any story in which someone who is kind of an unlikely hero has to take up the mantle and do something to save their world or, stop a war, whatever it is. So I think a great example of this, just to go off of, is like Frodo Baggins in The Lord of the Rings. He's just a hobbit, but he kind of just ends up with this responsibility, but it's not because of any special destiny or prophecy. He just kind of does it. Everyone, tell us your votes. Chosen one or unchosen one? 3, 2, 1.
Oh, I did early.
So I think chosen one trope gets a bad rap because I think we've seen it a lot. It's in a lot of stuff. You've got your Buffy the Vampire Slayers, you've got your Avatar: The Last Airbenders, you've got your Neo from The Matrix. It really is everywhere. It's a very ubiquitous trope, but I think there's a reason for that. And I think we all kind of gravitate towards this trope, particularly in fantasy, because I think when we're younger, we kind of want to believe we're like special and like our lives are going to be meaningful in some way. And the chosen one trope kind of gives you that. You're like, okay, I'm a normal 14-year-old girl going about my life, but oh no, I have a secret destiny. I'm a moon princess and now I'm Sailor Moon. Like, it's just that wonderful kind of escapism. Like, your life can be this adventure and you can be meant for more than just, going to school and like eating snacks, which is like a great pastime, but the chosen one trope kind of gives you that meaningfulness of your life. And then I think also, now that I'm older, the chosen one trope to me is less about you know, someone who's normal suddenly becoming special, and is more about the burden of that and how we sort of thrust responsibility onto especially young people. And it's like becomes kind of a burden, and there's a lot of like different ways that people have to deal with that. And so my favorite chosen one tropes are always ones in which the character really has to grapple with their status as this chosen one. So I think a great example of this is Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender. He finds out he's the Avatar, you know, he has this destiny, he has to bring balance, and he promptly runs away and like hides in an iceberg for 100 years and messes everything up. So that's my chosen one rant.
Okay, I'm going to follow up on this really quickly. I think Katie made great points. And also, I'm just going to say, you know, YA fantasy, Chosen One just like fits so perfectly into that, because I don't know about you guys, but when I was a teenager, I wanted to think that I had a special destiny, and I wanted to feel like the chosen one. You know, one day something would happen exciting, and like I would go off on this grand adventure. And okay, to be honest, I kind of wanted that from the age of like 8 onwards. And so now it's probably not going to happen, but at least I could go into these books and pretend to be these people, right? So I think one that I reread recently is Percy Jackson, actually. And I think that's a great character who balances that, doesn't want to be it, but also is like so perfect for it, and kind of grows into that and realizes what his strengths are. So I really love that aspect, because like, I want to be Percy. Let me be Percy.
Basically, there's a lot of stuff I do love about the chosen one trope, but I have always been more drawn to characters who kind of find their own adventure, who kind of claw their way into stories, because I think as much as all of us want to be special and would love to be the chosen one, I mean, most of us aren't, right? We live pretty ordinary lives. And even as a teenager, I think I knew that. And so seeing characters who didn't have this like magical destiny or this like particularly special thing, finding something that made them special, being smart and like cool and like maybe just daring enough to go out and take it for themselves resonated really deeply with me. I actually think a great example of this is Vicious by V.E. Schwab, because Victor and Eli both are these like normal college students, and they want superpowers, and so they go out and get them. And it's really dangerous, and it's really, really frightening what they're willing to do to push themselves to the limits of their ambition. But I also found something so relatable and so human in it. I read that book when I was in college, and I was like young and scrappy, and I wanted all of this stuff so badly, and I wasn't sure how I was going to kind of make the world give me what I wanted without it. Like it felt like both a cautionary tale, and I could see so much of myself in it. And I loved that. I think that it allows this like way to look at power in like a totally different lens from the way that the chosen one trope allows us to.
Yeah, I agree. I think that my problem with the chosen one is that it's kind of easy for it to be done wrong, and that makes me sad, because I did and still do love a lot of chosen one books. Like there are some amazing chosen one books, one of which is There Will Come a Darkness. I don't know if you can see it here.
Yes, we love There Will Come a Darkness.
Yeah, amazingly done chosen one tropes in there. But I think that sometimes an author can kind of go a little bit too far into the like, well, it's the reason why it works is because they're the chosen one, instead of kind of like working hard and making it like be more of like an agency thing. And that's why like I kind of do tend towards the unchosen one now more, because it like at least forces the writer to kind of be like, well, why are they the one who can fix this? It's because of like the actions that they take, as opposed to like the fate bringing it upon them. So I just really kind of like that. But I will say like a really good example of comparing chosen one, how a chosen one works in a world versus how non-chosen one is Six of Crows, because we were first introduced into this world with a chosen one trope, and then Six of Crows brings us back into the world with like very, 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 very obviously unchosen ones, and like shows us what the world can look like from the point of view of unchosen ones. And I feel like that just kind of gave such a fresh perspective to the Grecian world that people really liked and appreciated. That's my example.
I'm going to be a little bit boring here and say, like, I feel like you did just point out like the perfect sort of example of how both of these tropes are wonderful in their own ways. And like, I can't really argue against the Unchosen One trope, because I do think it's great to have stories where people just sort of step up and like do shit because they've decided that they're going to, versus someone who has a destiny thrust upon them. I think those are both really valuable narratives. And I think the only thing that I would say is I get why people don't like the Chosen One trope. I get why people are tired of it, but I still think there are so many ways to tell that story and to really delve into that narrative and think about like, what is it about the Chosen One trope that keeps coming back? Like, it's in religion, it's in our world. Like, we do this in our lives. There are like chosen ones in the real world where we're like, here's the person, here's the savior. We're going to put this all on them. And sometimes they are teenage girls, right? Like sometimes that happen. Like, and so I feel like it is still a really valuable narrative, although it's been done a lot. I think there are still fresh new ways to do it. And I think in particular, like having a chosen one who's not like a white, straight, male character like that we've seen 100,000 times before. And so I think it's still a valuable trope, especially when you're putting people who aren't traditionally like the chosen one in that role.
I think that's exactly what I was going to say, actually. I was going to add on to that. As I think that's always what I was looking for. And so I'm waiting for those stories to still be told. So I'm not willing to give up on this trope yet. I do love an ambitious, protagonist. Do not get me wrong. Like, oh God, I love that. But, I would love to see more, more diversity in the chosen ones. And I'm waiting for that, I guess.
Yeah, I think ultimately both of these tropes are about like young people in positions of power who are able to change the world. Is just how they get there. And I think all of us can agree that those people should look a little different from how they've looked for the last like 300, 400, 3,000 years. Oof.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like we did this in the Friends to Lovers, Enemies to Lovers panel too, but like, I feel like there's overlap, right? Because like, sometimes like, sometimes the chosen one has to also choose themselves, which I think was Katy before, and like also happens in your book really well. Sorry, I love Katy's. I would argue it happens in The Devouring Grey, and it also happens in The Tiger at Midnight. Sorry,
I did kind of write a chosen one book. We'll just ignore that.
All of you guys have people who have expectations thrust upon each other, but the narrative isn't like them just sitting on their butts. It's them eventually having to choose themselves, which is my whole point about the Unchosen One. I just want them to choose themselves. Like, the classic film Shrek. Where he doesn't want to be the savior. And at the end, he has to choose himself. I had to bring it up. I'm sorry, you guys.
I feel like Shrek is the perfect example of both. Like, the unchosen chosen one, or like
the example of. Okay, so this trope is what type of YA fantasy plot is better, epic quests or court intrigue? Everyone, 3, 2, 1.
I cannot. Where's my camera?
We got
it.
Yay! All right.
I messed it up twice now.
You're doing great.
You're doing great, sweetie. Thank you.
Yeah. So I feel like Epic Quest, the reason why I still like super love it is because it is a classic trope. And when people do it now, they have to do something extra to kind of like turn it on its head. And I've seen some like really, really creative ways of doing this. And I sound like a broken record, but I'm going to bring up There Will Come a Darkness again. There Will Come Darkness, but also like there's a lot of books coming out now that have multiple POVs where it's kind of like they start off separately, and then some of the tension is legitimately like, when are they going to meet each other? Which is one of my favorite things. It's very Song of Ice and Fire, right? Because like you want the Stark children to meet up with each other again, and you wait like the whole series for it to happen. But I also will say, like, sometimes just like classic is classic for a reason. And my example for that is the Percy Jackson series, which like he goes on quests, but I think that what is done really well in that series is that like it kind of like pretends like, oh, I'm just like such a simple story, but at the end it's really more about like Percy's relationships with all of his friends, his relationships with his father, his relationship with his dad, like his relationship with his powers and the prophecy. And I feel like that's just so well done. And at the end of the day, like that emotional resonance that's like constantly throughout the thread of the book makes the quest that much more significant to me.
I love an epic quest, man. I mean, A of all, you're at home reading a book and suddenly you're traveling, you know, throughout this entire fantastical world. And I think that's really the first thing that draws me to Epic Quest is just you get to see so much of the fantasy world when you put the characters on a quest. They have to go to different places. It's great. I also think like just the sort of symbolic journey versus literal journey is just great. Love that. Thinking about some of my favorite like quest books, Lord of the Rings obviously comes to mind. Those books are and movies are so brilliant because the entire series is just this one thing they need to do. One thing. Take the ring to Mordor, and it like spirals out in this really beautiful, amazing way, and they get caught up in all of these other kind of problems and characters split off, and like it's just really, I think, brilliantly plotted. A recent one, much more recent than Lord of the Rings, The Merciful Crow. I think that's such a good example of what you were talking about, Kat, where it's like the storyline is so simple. It's like we need to get this prince to this place, and it's basically a road trip. You're just like a road trip with your pals and like a prince and his bodyguard who's hot. So,
yes, I hope. Yeah, The Merciful Crow is a road trip story.
Exactly.
Bones teeth. Okay, I love The Merciful Crow, but I love court intrigue. And I would argue that some of the examples that were brought up, a la Game of Thrones, actually have a ton of court intrigue in them. And those are the parts of those books that I always found the most interesting. I think what I like the most about court intrigue is that it allows you to kind of sink into a setting that feels as complicated and intricate as a quest does, because it's like almost like the court itself becomes a character. All of the betrayal, all of the recurring like different players in the big game, it feels like you can like keep track of them and you're watching something that's really big unfolding in a really small space. Big power moves, but like one palace. And I love that. I love the way it makes me feel like I'm just completely in it, no matter like whose eyes I'm looking through, because they're all kind of together fighting against like opposite. They all have opposing interests. I think my favorite recent court intrigue example is the Crow Prince trilogy, which is excellent. And it has everything I love about court intrigue. I mean, it's got so much betrayal to the point where I feel like you could make one of those ridiculous diagrams that looks like a conspiracy theory wall about who's backstabbed who. And somehow you can keep track of all of it, and all of it is super compelling and well done. I'm obsessed.
I can't even argue against Cruel Prince. That series is so good.
Yes.
And to piggyback off that, Christine, I think what so many like good court intrigue writers do so well, it's like they really make like it's a very confined space. You rarely can really go. You can't go that far from the court because you gotta be where everyone is, and yet they make it so heart pounding and like you literally feel like, oh my god, what is going to happen next? When like no one's left the room in 3 hours. Like
they make meetings interesting.
Yes. Like example, I love the Winner's Curse trilogy. Oh my goodness! Like the first 2 books probably take place across like what 4 settings. Like it's really not that many settings, but like that series and like the dual POV and the way we see our main character Kestrel trying to like grapple for power and fight like in this court where like she needs to learn to use her head because like it's a world that values people who know how to physically fight. So she's like, I can't do that, so I'm going to outsmart all of them. And the way she does that and the way she turns everyone's like their own like kind of like allegiances and beliefs and everything against them without ever lifting a sword, and then by the end, like, okay, I'm not gonna spoil it for you guys, but like considering the fact this is a world where like you need a sword to get things done and she doesn't have a sword and she still gets things done, you know she does it well.
You guys are killing me. Those are two of my favorite series. I can't even
Come to
argue.
the dark side.
Fine, then,
we have
then you know what? We
something.
picked Shrek, though.
But it's only Shrek 1 or the whole Shrek series, because I could argue Shrek 2 was a core Intrigue book, honestly.
How
I was also
dare
ready to
you.
do that. We're on
How
the same
dare
page here.
you? But okay, here's the thing. Here's the thing about quests. So is that I think that quests allow you kind of to see the greater world like up close and personal. I think Court Intrigue, you can definitely do world building in that, but it's more of a reference, right? Whereas a quest, like you can see the whole kingdom, and it's the whole idea of like, oh, you never knew it was this bad, but now you're seeing it up close or whatever. Like when Alina goes out and like sees all the people who are like praising her as like a living saint, it has a lot of impact as opposed to her being told it. So like a quest gives you that ability. So
yeah. Yes.
That's a great point. And this reminds me of Tess of the Road, which is like my favorite quest book. And it's so perfect.
You guys are supposed to rebut us.
No, we're both.
I like both of them.
And Tess of the Road's amazing. One of my favorite books of all time, Christina Lynn Herman.
So many. I'm so tired. Good. You're weak. We can defeat you.
Come on, Katie. Katie, come on. We're on the same team.
Okay, so the next thing that we're debating are these romantic tropes. That's triangles versus soulmates. So everyone hold up what team you like.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Oh.
Oh, I did it. I did it, y'all. For right this time.
Janella, your love triangle is so much better than mine.
Is it? Is it though?
Yes, objectively better. Okay, so second only to enemies to lovers, I have to say love triangles is up there when it comes to the most tense and conflicted and intense romance trope. So, I mean, I think I will put the caveat there of it when done well, this can be kind of the most absorbing type of romance trope because you really don't know what this person's going to choose, and it's going to depend so much on the person they become, which is super exciting because that means I think that kind of that communicates that you have a choice and that I just love it. Okay, so you have a choice, number one, and then number two, it's intense, right? Because who's going to pick who, what's going to happen, and I think the caveat, like I said before, is when it's done poorly, it becomes really clear who the author or the screenwriter or whoever wants you to choose. But when the audience doesn't know or when the reader doesn't know and they're able to kind of go along for the ride, that's when it's perfect. So for example, in the Hunger Games, I think Katniss really has two paths that she could choose, and those two people in front of her will decide the type of person she's going to become at the end of the story. Mm-hmm. So when she picks one of them, that says something about who she wants to be as well, which I think is really exciting. And as a writer, that's a great way to show character depth and growth.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I feel like this trope gets a lot of hate, but there's a lot of surprising amount of depth that comes with it when you look at it closer. And I feel like you touched on a lot of points that I was going to say about how it reveals a lot more about the main character who's locked in the triangle than anything else. Because when you look at the triangle, the two love interests or however many love interests are in a way mirrors for the main character. Each of them reflect some internal piece of that main character. Otherwise, they wouldn't be attracted to that person. And the way that possibility and choices are made, I feel like choice is good. And I also think that love at the end of the day is messy and it's rarely linear. It's very confusing. So it's okay to not be sure about certain things. But I do love the elements of when it's hard to choose. I feel like To All the Boys I've Loved Before is a really good example of a love triangle where it's very hard to choose because you can see Laura Jean going with either character. I mean, I know some people will argue with that, but there are definitely avenues that are presented. So,
Rosie, I feel like you've got something to say.
I'm just John Ambrose high forever, and
That's
you
okay.
just dredged up so many memories when you mentioned that, because I'm just like the pain I felt when she chose Peter.
Oh yeah, no, totally.
Okay, so the soulmate. So I will agree that I think choice is such an important part of like what makes the love triangle so great, and I definitely Swati makes such a good point that a truly well constructed love triangle isn't just like someone choosing like, oh, who do I want to like make out with, but it's literally like, what kind of person do I want to be, but also who do I want to make out with sometimes. But when it comes to soulmates, I think what's so cool about the soulmate trope is when authors use it very masterfully to show that even though a person has found their soulmate, love is not easy. And like, even when you found the person, you still need to keep choosing this person again and again. And a book I think that really twists the soulmate trope on its head is A Thousand Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. And basically, in that world, the way she messes with the idea of a soulmate is that, like, in the book, they have the technology to jump to throughout the multiverse. So the character literally jumps to alternate universes where in one she's a princess, another she's like an orphan in London, another she's like in war-torn like America during World War III. And there's this boy who keeps on showing up. She also thinks he killed her father, but that's that. We're talking about the soulmate part right now. And what's fascinating is at first, because they keep seeing each other in all these worlds, like kind of in book one, she's like, okay, he must be my soulmate. Cool. But when it gets interesting is book two. At this point, they're already together. But in book two, they're going on another journey. And she actually comes to worlds where she finds she doesn't like him. And the choices he's made in these other multiverses, he's become a kind of person she doesn't want to be around. She does not trust him. She does not like him. And so this is her discovering another side of him after she's already chosen him. And she's like, if like every version of this person is the version of the person I love, he's capable of such great evil. He's capable of such great good. Which version is he going to become? How do I choose a person when I've literally seen him shoot my best friend? Like, it really brings into perspective, what does it mean to have your person and to choose your person?
If I wasn't already team soulmates, you just convinced me. Sounds really good. My preference for the soulmate trope versus the love triangle trope is very personal, and it's just that love triangles stress me out.
Okay, that's valid. That's extremely valid.
Either there's two choices and one of them is obviously lame and you're like, why are you even trying to choose? Or they're both great and then someone gets their feelings hurt and I feel bad.
That's like the most delicious part of it. You feel suffering with the main character.
Let me just live in a world where like love works out and like no one gets their feelings hurt. That's not true. I like when people get their feelings hurt, but not in not in real life. Obviously in books, not when it's like an unrequited, like, I don't know. Love triangles really stress me out. I think Rosie totally hit the nail on the head, and I don't know exactly what to add to that, except yes, I think it's such an interesting thing when you do take that idea of a soulmate and this sort of ubiquitous thing that exists in our culture and really like delve into what does that mean and like what does it mean to have this person who is like meant for you? What does that mean? I'm watching The Magicians right now, and I'm not going to do a spoiler, but we just
no spoilers.
We just hit a part where they kind of encounter this other timeline, and one of the characters who exists in our timeline like comes over from the other timeline, and they see one of the other characters, and they're like, "Oh, that's my soulmate." And these two characters in our timeline have literally never interacted. And you're just like, what? Anyway, I just thought it was so like brilliant. Because suddenly you're forced to confront this idea that like in this other reality, these two people are meant to be together in some way. And in our reality, like that we are used to seeing, like they have nothing in common. So I thought that was really.
So are they
no one is wrong, honestly.
No, you guys are wrong. Love triangles.
No.
Okay, but my thing is, both of these, when done well, I think that's the key phrase, are so good.
Done well, I feel bad.
John Ambrose wins this round, and he wins the whole thing.
Okay, Rosie, I don't know if we're going to be friends, but after this, I might be a Kavinsky person.
Oh, definitely. Oh, I'm absolutely. Because I don't wait.
Guys, you can't get
it. So the last tropes that we're going to debate are the masquerade party scene or the training montage. So everyone hold up your sign. 3, 2, 1.
I forgot to write this one, so I just brought a sword.
stuff. Christine, where's your mask?
And here,
Like,
This is why we win. You both came ready to party.
I just came ready to fight.
okay, so I got one thing for you guys to just think about. Milan.
Oh,
That's
Yeah,
that's
not
the
fair.
entire argument.
That's so talking about mind meld. I was thinking
Not
the same
fair.
thing. Mind meld.
You just need to watch How I'll Make a Man Out of You, that song. That montage is everything.
oh god, you should just
That's
end
my
there.
argument.
I feel like we're done.
To pick out, okay, let's break down why I'll Make a Man of You works so well. Like, besides number one being an awesome song, besides number two having Li Shang, there's just the idea with the train montage is like really seeing the moment. Like, if a train montage is placed well in a story, it's a moment where like the lesson the character has been trying to learn for like the entire beginning of the book really starts setting into motion. And just that moment, like finally seeing that change happen. Like for Mulan, it's the moment she really starts to kind of overcome her own kind of like self-esteem issues and her whole idea, oh, I can't get anything done right. I can't do anything. I'm not worth anything to my family. She has to realize, yes, I can, because if I don't, I will die in this training camp. Really seeing her start to come into her own over the course of the song and like really starting, and it translates to books too, because it's the moment, like we see it in Divergent, we see it in the Grisha trilogy. It's the moment where the character starts to take that real first step into the person they're meant to be.
And also, who doesn't like to see the underdog start to become someone who's like a little more confident? Also, I just like action. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I would argue that a masquerade or a party, a lot of action happens there too. First of all, I feel like my running argument for why I love masquerades and parties are the aesthetic. Love the glam, love the gorgeous ball gowns, love the parties. I feel like parties are also just the perfect vehicle to like, you know, bring in all the chaos, for things to just like to stir the pot, for like everything to come to a head, because you have all these people gathered, you have this certain event that's happening, crap goes down, and and I also feel like parties are a great way for showing off-world elements, where you see like what food are they serving, are they dancing, I hope they are, what's the fashion, is there etiquette, like you get a lot of interesting details about the story that goes beyond the characters. I feel like a good example of this was like The Cruel Prince. They have a really wild party scene where things kind of go a little too overboard, and I feel like that kind of encapsulates everything that I just said.
I would also argue that, so you guys are saying that like a training montage is a device that's utilized to show like character development and for all of the lessons they've been trying to learn to sink in. A party scene is usually a place where all of that learning and all of those tools have to be deployed. All of that stuff is finally used. And so that's the payoff. And I feel like a payoff is, I feel like they kind of need each other almost. Like a payoff is not rewarding without seeing the effort put into it. But if the effort happens and there's no payoff, that's not fun either. And I think a really great example of this is the masquerade scene in Phantom, which I am surprised Janella has not brought up because it is iconic.
I didn't want to be that person. I'm glad you were that person for me, Christine.
Okay, so what I love about the masquerade scene in Phantom, aside from the fact that there's two hot men fighting over someone named Christine, is that there's like so many things that have been, all this tension that's been boiling under the surface through the whole first act, and it's the Act 2 opener of Phantom. And everybody, it's almost like they put the mask on and then they can be who they really are behind it. There's so many fun elements that you can play with there. That's in everything from a Cinderella story to so many traditional operas to so many books. And it's because there's something about the idea of being free to be who you are when you can hide your face. And so that's when like the most deceit and the most like character development moments and the most honesty is, when you can almost like, you feel like you can hide behind something and so you can be more yourself. It's so interesting and so fun.
Everything you just said, yes.
That's a great point. And I cannot disagree with anything either one of you said. So, okay, what I thought was really interesting about what you said, Christine, is the payoff. And I was thinking about, you know, for the types of stories that have one or the other, like what's the setup for a masquerade scene versus like what's the payoff for a training montage? I was thinking like a battle for a training montage, but what would you guys say for a masquerade scene? Like what's that setup?
Court intrigue.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I thought about this.
a lot of relationships develop like, you know, that tense dance scene or
Yes.
a lot of things just come to a head at a party that like kind of ripple effects to like the rest of the story. And I feel like a lot of relationships definitely develop at a party scene.
So I just wanted to add, like, I'll take your dance scene and I'll raise you. The scene where like she's training and like the mentor comes behind her, she's like, "No, you're doing it wrong," and then like they put their arms around them to like do the bow or like help them with the sword. Like I'm just saying,
Is that not a dance in disguise though?
Okay, so I think what we've hit here is that both is good. And also I'm going to close this up by adding that there's a wedding in Shrek that's very important. So that's a party.
Let's end on Shrek.
All right, yay. It was so fun. Thanks, everybody. Bye.